Legacies aren't built in a single day. They're earned, grinding night after night, city after city, bleeding in front of 20 people in a gym that smells like rust and failure. Most wrestlers pay their dues in silence, clawing their way up from the bingo halls to the biggest stage of them all. Greatness doesn't care about the blood in your veins, not until it's spilled inside the ring. They say diamonds are made under pressure. But what do you call someone who was already born shining? She didn't rise from the ashes. She was born in the throne room. In a world where most fight for a flicker of spotlight, she was handed the gold before she even knew what to do with it. While others bled for opportunity, she cashed in with her last name. Before she learned the rules of the kingdom, she was already wearing the crown. And when she ruled like no one else. Every title claimed, every record broken. But every win came with an asterisk. Every cheer carried an echo of resentment. She was booked to dominate and blamed for it, pushed to the top and hated for staying there. Because somewhere along the way, the golden child became something else. She didn't ask for this fate. She was cursed with greatness and punished for it. Where there were cheers, now there's venom. Where there was admiration, now only disdain. So how did it happen? How did WWE's most decorated female superstar become its biggest villain? How did Charlotte Flair become the most hated person in wrestling? She was born Ashley Flair, the youngest daughter of Ric Flair, the limousine-riding, jet-flying, 16-time world champion whose shadow still drapes across wrestling like a velvet curtain. While other kids discovered wrestling on TV, Charlotte lived backstage. Arena tunnels were her playground. Hotel lobbies full of legends. That was just her hallway. The roar of the crowd wasn't a fantasy. It was the soundtrack of her childhood. But Charlotte wasn't trying to follow Rick. She tried to outrun him. She played volleyball at Appalachian State. Division I scholarship. She trained to jump, to pivot, to lead. She wasn't chasing cheers. She was chasing wins. Wrestling was the thing she avoided until she couldn't. In 2012, she signed with WWE. No indie circuit, no respect earned from tape trades, just a contract and a last name too big to ignore. The Performance Center welcomed her like royalty. She debuted on NXT TV in 2013, beating Bayley with raw athleticism and a spark you can't teach. A natural, still green, but undeniable. Then everything changed. In March 2013, her younger brother, Reed Flair, died of an overdose. He was supposed to be the one, the golden boy, the prodigy Rick had pinned his hopes on. But Reed's dream ended in a hotel room, and it broke the family, especially Charlotte. Already training, she shifted her purpose. She wasn't wrestling for herself anymore. She was carrying his dream now. Every match became a tribute, every win a form of grief. At first, she only used the name Charlotte, taken from her hometown. No Flair, not yet. Her first heel turn came fast. She turned on Bayley and teamed up with Sasha Banks and Summer Rae to form the BFFs. The smile faded, the swagger took over. She was a natural heel, loved being hated, but too good to ignore. You could see the Flair DNA in every step, her posture, her smirk, her rhythm in the ring. And then came the moment everything clicked. NXT TakeOver, 2014. Charlotte defeated Natalya in the tournament finals to become the new NXT Women's Champion. Ric Flair and Bret Hart were in opposite corners, watching legacies collide. That match wasn't just technically brilliant, it was an emotional coronation. Ric Flair wept in the corner. Charlotte stood tall and finally embraced the Flair in her name. By the time she lost the title in a fatal four-way at TakeOver, Charlotte had already outgrown NXT. She was Pro Wrestling Illustrated's 2014 Rookie of the Year. Her matches were must-watch. Her ceiling, nowhere in sight. For a brief moment, fans believed in her, not as Ric Flair's daughter, but as Charlotte. Back then, women in wrestling weren't treated like the men. The men main evented. The women got 10-minute filler segments and posed for posters. But that started to change. Because of four women, Charlotte, Sasha Banks, Bayley, Becky Lynch, the Four Horsewomen didn't wait for permission. They took their time. Their matches were hard-hitting, technical, physical. They started putting on 20-minute clinics, and the crowds took notice. Then came the call-up. July 13th, 2015. Stephanie McMahon introduced Charlotte, Sasha, and Becky on Raw. It was framed as a revolution, a break from the outdated divas image. Time for real athletes, real wrestling. She picked up her first pay-per-view win at Battleground, tapping out Brie Bella with the figure 8. Now, nepotism in wrestling has always been complicated. In Hollywood, being a Nepo baby is a PR nightmare. But in wrestling, it's different. Second and third generation stars are often celebrated. Roman Reigns, Bret Hart, The Rock, and of course, the greatest wrestler of our generation, Dominic Mysterio. In this business, legacy sells, so when Charlotte hit the main roster, fans didn't reject her. Not yet. They embraced her. She was different, serious, athletic, not a model, not an accessory. She felt like change, and that mattered. By September, she dethroned Nikki Bella to win the Divas Championship at Night of Champions 2015. Her father celebrated in the ring with her. The crowd roared. A Flair had returned to gold, and this time, it was Charlotte. Charlotte held on to the title through the end of 2015, and slowly, the heel edge returned. She faked injuries, used distractions, leaned harder on Ric Flair at ringside. By January 2016, after attacking Becky post-match, Charlotte had fully turned heel, and once again, she was dominant, and headed into WrestleMania 32 as the face of the women's revolution. That night, the Divas title was officially retired. A new WWE Women's Championship was unveiled. Charlotte, Sasha, and Becky collided in a match that stole the show, and Charlotte won. It was history. The crowd respected the moment, but the murmurs began. Why does Charlotte always win the big one? Why is she the face of the movement? Not Sasha or Becky, who had bigger grassroots followings. Charlotte was becoming the queen. But the fan perception started to shift. In 2016, she went to war with Sasha Banks. 6 months, 5 title changes. They main evented Raw. They main evented Hell in a Cell, the first women to ever do it. And Charlotte won, over and over. Sasha would win on Raw. Charlotte would take it back on pay-per-view. The company trusted her, but the audience started pulling back. Her final pay-per-view win came at Roadblock, an Iron Man match. She made Sasha tap in over time. Rick came out again. Another title, another coronation. By 2017, Charlotte had never been beaten one-on-one on pay-per-view. That changed at Fastlane, when Bayley pinned her clean. The streak was over, but the perception damage was done. She was a 5-time champion. She'd main evented more than any woman in WWE, but the cheers were getting quieter, the eye rolls louder. After WrestleMania 33, she moved to SmackDown. She beat Natalya in her hometown. She'd now held every major women's title in WWE, NXT, Divas, Raw, SmackDown. A Grand Slam champion. She had done everything. But 2018 would bring something else. WrestleMania 34, Charlotte Flair versus Asuka, undefeated streak, 914 days, Royal Rumble winner. Asuka was untouchable, and then Charlotte made her tap, clean, and the room went quiet. A moment that should have felt monumental felt hollow. Charlotte's hand raised, Rick in the front row, music playing, but the crowd didn't know how to feel. Because if Charlotte Flair was the measuring stick, why did it feel like she was measuring everyone else down? The narrative had started to harden. Charlotte Flair doesn't just win, she consumes. 2 days later, Carmella cashed in Money in the Bank and took Charlotte's title. The chase resumed. But the real shift came at SummerSlam 2018. Becky Lynch was the people's choice, a slow burn underdog finally getting her shot. Then Charlotte returned and was added to the match. She pinned Carmella, won her 7th title, and broke Becky. Post-match, Becky snapped. No words, just violence. Charlotte was supposed to be the hero. Becky, the heel. The fans flipped the script. They were done watching Charlotte take what others built. Becky became the man. The rebellion had begun. Charlotte embraced the heat, the system's chosen one. Then came Survivor Series. Becky was out. She picked her replacement, Charlotte. The match with Ronda was chaos, stiff, wild. Charlotte snapped, kendo sticks, chairs, total destruction. Disqualified, but cheered. Not out of love for Charlotte, but hate for Ronda. For one night, the crowd was with her. While her career kept climbing, Charlotte's personal life kept crashing. By then, she'd gone through 2 public divorces, each one messier than the last. lawsuits, accusations, headlines that stained her image. The final turn came in the lead-up to WrestleMania 35. Becky Lynch had become the face of the company. She won the Royal Rumble in January 2019. The people wanted one match, Becky versus Ronda. But Vince McMahon inserted Charlotte into the story. In the script, he suspended Becky, called Charlotte a professional, corporate spin. In reality, it was the same old pattern. Charlotte added where she didn't belong. Then came March 26, 2019, just weeks before WrestleMania. Charlotte Flair defeated Asuka on SmackDown to win her 8th Women's Championship. No building, no storyline, just a match dropped out of nowhere. Asuka had carried the title for months, and just like that, it was gone. All to add another belt to WrestleMania's main event. Fans were furious, not just because Asuka had been sacrificed, but because WWE was padding Charlotte's legacy. Again, one more title, one more unnecessary coronation. WrestleMania 35 was historic, the first women's main event in company history, but the people wanted one match, Becky versus Ronda. Charlotte arrived in a helicopter, Ric Flair's daughter in full queen regalia, regal, untouchable, but she didn't leave with anything. Becky pinned Ronda. WrestleMania 35 could have been a reset. But that's not how WWE saw her. If the company was the castle, Charlotte was its crown. No matter who sat on the throne, she was always close by. Then came the one that changed everything. TLC 2019. Charlotte and Becky Lynch versus the Kabuki Warriors, Asuka and Kairi Sane. The first women's tag team, TLC, main event. Midway through the match, Kairi Sane suffered a concussion. She staggered. Her eyes glazed over. She wasn't okay, but Charlotte didn't stop. A powerbomb through a table, thrown into ladders, dragged by the hair. Maybe she didn't realize, but she kept going. Becky stepped in, checked on Kairi, adjusted the finish. Asuka carried the rest. But the damage was done. Clips of Charlotte ragdolling a concussed opponent went viral. Backlash poured in. Even the locker room buzzed. Charlotte didn't just look overbooked, she looked reckless. She later claimed she didn't know, blamed adrenaline, said she apologized, but not publicly. And fans didn't forget. Then, in January 2020, it happened again. Charlotte won the Royal Rumble. WWE always defaulted to Charlotte, and the fatigue started to show, so they tried to pivot. Charlotte challenged Rhea Ripley for the NXT Women's Championship at WrestleMania. On paper, it was a smart move, but Charlotte beat Rhea clean. Another coronation, another reign, and this time, even the locker room was frustrated. The NXT run was short. She lost the belt in a triple threat, wasn't even pinned. Then, she disappeared. By late 2021, Charlotte Flair wasn't just a character. She was a conversation. Every promotion, every match, every title win sparked debate about booking, about favoritism, about power, and that tension exploded during the championship exchange. SmackDown. Charlotte held the Raw Women's title. Becky Lynch held SmackDown's. The draft forced a title swap. What should have been simple went sideways. Charlotte dropped her belt instead of handing it over. Becky flung hers back. Sonya Deville froze in the middle. The whole thing reeked of real heat. Backstage, it blew up. Reports said Charlotte went off script. Becky felt disrespected. Long simmering tension boiled over, and fans, they saw a vindication. The entitled character Charlotte had played for years now felt real. She wasn't just overbooked, she was a locker room problem. Then came WrestleMania 39. Rhea Ripley had won the 2023 Royal Rumble, and she chose Charlotte, a rematch from their 2020 clash. This time, Charlotte did the job. She put Rhea over in a match that stole the show. Violent, emotional, honest. After the bell, she sat ringside, smiling in defeat. And for one night, fans gave her respect. For over a decade, Charlotte Flair was WWE's constant. Titles, headlines, controversy, her name was always there. But when she tore her ACL, MCL, and meniscus in December 2023, everything stopped. In her absence, the division didn't collapse. It flourished. Rhea Ripley ruled with steel in her spine. Io Sky turned every match into a highlight reel. Liv Morgan found her fire. And rising fast was Tiffany Stratton. The pink storm WWE never saw coming. She won Money in the Bank, cashed it in, became champion. Then came the inevitable. WWE fans know the script by now. Death, taxes, and Charlotte Flair walking back into the title picture like it's her birthright. Royal Rumble, Charlotte returned, won the damn thing, again. Not because she needed it, because that's what she does. The crowd didn't cheer. They seethed. The boos weren't playful. They were personal. She went after Tiffany. And for a moment, Tiffany was starstruck, idolizing the woman she grew up watching. But then the curtain dropped. Charlotte didn't come to pass the torch. She came to burn it. Live mic, no filter. She dragged Tiffany through the mud, just to make herself shine brighter. And Tiffany had enough. She fired back, off script, venom-laced. She went there. The failed marriages, the plastic surgeries, the chaos in every locker room she touched. Charlotte snapped. You could see it in her eyes, hear it in the silence between the boos. This wasn't heel heat, it was rejection. You can blame the booking. You can say WWE shoved her down our throats, just like they did with Roman. But there's one big difference. Charlotte Flair is the most decorated woman in WWE history. Nobody touches her resume. But behind every title reign, there's a story. And most of them aren't flattering. The ex-husbands, the court drama, the real-life heat with Becky, with Tiffany. And then there was TLC, when Charlotte brutalized Kairi Sane, even though she was clearly concussed. It was beyond just reckless. It was inhumane. It's not just bad optics, it's who she is, arrogant, entitled, unwilling to change. And now, the fans aren't booing the character, they're booing the person. And that is how Charlotte Flair, born to be a queen, became the most hated woman in wrestling. Thanks for sticking around. Drop a like or a dislike. Hit subscribe for more deep dives, and I'll see you in the next one.